Brothers or Girtham.
Anybody know how I can get that screen to be horizontal? Okay, well, I'm gonna have to put the camera this way then, I guess. I hope everyone can see and hear me. Let me just refresh that, see if it makes a difference. Thanks, Giovanni. Is that better? There's a slight delay on my video, so it's I can't see what I do, if you know what I mean. I think that's okay now. I just went live just because it's my time, but if you can, just watch the end of Kate's video because it's amazing. Actually, super intimidating. How can I follow such an amazing group of artists that we've had today? It's an incredible thing that the Shiflett Brothers are doing. Many people are stressed, anxious, bored, in need of inspiration, and just watching today, I mean, myself, I've learned more today than I have in months and months and months of practice and watching tutorials. So thank you to everybody that's participated so far. It's been amazing for me, and I'm sure it's been amazing for everybody that's been watching. Yeah, it's incredible. Such a great thing to be doing. So I was going to continue on with this piece, which was the last thing I was doing, the last thing I did live, which was an embarrassingly long time ago. And it's come on quite a long way since then. But it's like Aris was saying earlier, I'm at the stage now where I'm really detailing it, and it's super fine work and slow work that requires a lot of attention, and I find it really difficult to pay attention to the comments, for example. Hello Suzanne, hello Tara. So if I miss your comments, I apologize now. I'm going to do my best to see everybody. But I thought instead of doing this, I might try and show some more specific techniques using monster clay. If anybody has anything they want to see, I'm not I'm not promising I'm going to be able to do it, but I will do my best. Yeah, so as I said, it's a bit nerve-wracking. There's been a lot of watches so far. Bloody hell, there's already 57. Oh my god. Okay, well, I have something to help me. A little bit of Dutch courage here. Or actually, in this case, it's more like whatever they had left in the supermarket, cheap Spanish courage. But yeah, that's helping me. It's helping me relax into it slightly. Don't normally drink when I work at all. I normally partake in herbal medication, but since this whole respiratory crisis is going on, I've decided to stay away from that and started getting into some edibles, which are quite interesting. But anyway, that's for another time. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, they want to see anything specific, let me know. But I thought I would get started with, somebody said earlier that they wanted to see how to do hard and flat surfaces for things like armor and weapons and things like that. So this piece I might do a little bit of work on later. It's going to be a prize for our Kickstarter project, which sadly has to be put on hold. It was going to be April the 6th we were going to launch, but because of everything that's going on, we don't think it's the right time really to be doing crowdfunding. People need their money for other things right now, and they have much more important things to worry about. So we're going to hold back, and we are going to keep doing it, but we're going to do it later on in the year. But basically the concept of this was to have our main character here, who's called Diamond, who was designed by my business partner Kieran Stevens, who I'm hoping is going to drop by to say hello. He might already be here, I'm not sure. If not, then he is a young comic book writer, very good, incredible. And we are releasing our first book called Diamond, which is a superhero-based comic book, and this will be the main character. And the idea for him is to be, I'm going to have some bandages and things. This is one of the main enemies called Mannequin, who can duplicate himself. So the idea was to have lots of arms coming out of the ground and him to be kind of trying to fight it off. And he's going to have bandages pulling him back, strapping him to the floor. Funny thing, actually, I actually hate sculpting hands. So I started to come up with a concept for it, thinking, yeah, this is going to be trickier than I thought. But it's actually been a very good practice. I know the hands look crap right now. I've just got the basic shapes down for most of them, and I just started adding more mass to the knuckle areas, and they are just waiting to be refined slightly. And this is the face of the main character, which also very rough. I'm going to eventually add the head on. But for the time being, I'm using Arnie, good old Arnie head, which has taken a bit of a battering over the years. It's what I use for all my 6 scale stuff. It's good to have the odd head lying around. I've also got a few hands lying around to use as references. So I may well do some fine detail work on that in a while. But for the time being, I thought I would show you how I do some hard surface sculpture, which is something that a lot of people seem to ask about. Oh, crap, sorry. My camera stand is right next to my chair, so if I knock it, I apologise. Let me just check the comments. Bloody hell. Where are we? Hello, everybody. Hi, Martin. Thanks for joining, Jared. Hi, Mike, or Mick, sorry. Wow, loads of people. Yeah, I did see the hand sculpt. As I said, I mean, for me, hands are really difficult. Hands, eyes, you know what? I'm not that good at anatomy. That's why I'm better at things like that, which is just, you know, you can take some big liberties when you're doing creatures, and I find it much easier. So I've got some monster clay here that has been in the microwave for about 5 minutes here. So it's not super wet all the way through. The middle part is really moist, look. It's like a liquid, but towards the edges it's quite firm. So that's going to be good for me to get started with, and it will cool down over the time we're doing it. Not much time, an hour. It's not much you can get done really, but everybody else has done such incredible stuff already. I'm going to try my best. So let's think about what I can do flat surface wise. I normally start out with a nice piece of clay like this, and the good thing about monster clay is it's not sticky, so you can really use your fingers to smooth it, and then it's a case of cutting out shapes and layering it. So I'm going to get a chunk of clay to work on as a base. like I say, if I'm not speaking, it's because my brain can't do too many things at the same time. We'll just get a nice flat surface to work from, and then I'm going to lay it down, try and lay it down quite flat. The other good thing I like to do, if you've got a nice flat surface like this, Monster Clay, when it's warm, you can kind of almost polish it by rubbing it on a flat surface, and you can see that it gives kind of a polished look to the raised areas of it. And then you can flip it over and do it on the other side and continue on like that. So that is not flat, and it doesn't look like a flat surface like metal or armor plating or anything like that. So what you can do, first of all, try and get it as flat as you can with your hands. And then you want to use a rake. Now a rake tool can be anything from a saw blade to a guitar string, or even something like that you could use as a type of rake. You can you see that? Yeah. You can kind of pull it across the surface of the clay, and it will just pick up all the bumps. And obviously this clay is quite soft because it's just come out of the microwave, so you can see I'm kind of scraping it down. And that will generally get you a pretty good flat surface. And then all the bits that you can pull off, you just ball up, and you can leave those for something else. So I'm going to take a thick rake that I made myself using a bass guitar string. It's literally just a piece of metal tubing. You can use brass or aluminium. And I just cut off a piece of bass guitar string, poked it inside, and then fixed it with some epoxy, any kind of plumber's putty or two-part epoxy that you mix together. And then from there, and try and get a bit closer, it's literally just a case of scraping over the surface. I hope my hand's not in the way here. Doesn't really matter at this stage which direction you go. Just got to make sure you pull off all the bogies that come off when you're doing it. You can also do this on, I mean, this is how I refine and smooth any surface, really. It doesn't have to be a flat surface that this technique works on. For example, this guy here in the background, the skin and the trousers and everything, I do all the same. This is the same technique. The difference comes when you start cutting out shapes, and then we get into some really fine detail tooling with tools like this, for example, like wire tools, which are really good for cutting out and refining tight edges and lines. So this is the first stage of smoothing out a flat surface with Monster Clay. Also works with Chavant, or I guess with Sculpey as well. I mean, I don't actually work with polymer clays that much anymore. I started off using them before I even touched oil clay, but as soon as I found Chavant, the Sculpey went out the window. Not literally, but I went in a plastic bag so it didn't go all dry. But I really don't ever use it. And I probably should, but I just find it, I don't know, I just find it harder to work with than oil clay. So when you've gone over the surface a few times with the fat rake, or the thick bass guitar string rake like I'm using here, that is going to give you a very even surface. Even though it's a rough surface, at the moment we're thinking about the larger bumps more than the actual surface of the clay. There's a bit of metal wire in the middle of that. Thing is, I reuse my Monster Clay quite a lot, so it's full of aluminium and other bits of crap that are lying around. Sorry, watch my language. Okay, so we've got a relatively flat, smooth surface there that is quite rough. Now, one way you can really smooth that out really quickly is to use a jet flame lighter like this. Like Aris was saying earlier on, a butane torch or something like that. Sorry, I keep forgetting about these comments. Hi, Emily. Yes, Nottingham, big up, represent. I haven't been to Nottingham for years, which is my fault. I should go back. I'm not going back now, though. I can't go anywhere right now. I can't even leave my bloody house right now. Tina, yeah, I've never tried that. I could, yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. If it was, the thing is with Monster Clay is once it's set up and it's really cool, it's pretty hard, but so sculpy, and I know you can put that through a pasta machine, so I guess, yeah, give it a try. I don't actually have a pasta machine. I keep meaning to buy one. It's one of those things that I just never get around to buying. So one thing you can do at this stage is to use a butane lighter or a jet flame, and you're literally going to go over and heat the surface until, well, and stop before it starts to bubble, because if you stay too long in one spot, it will start to bubble. But this is a really good way of taking out the fine rake marks that we just made. And it kind of evens everything out. Got to be careful with it though, like Aris was saying earlier. If you have an area with some fine detail and you go over it with this flame, it will merge all those details together and you'll be back to square one with it. But already you can see, let me just see if I can't actually see my own screen because of all the comments. I wonder how to get rid of those. I'm not sure. Okay, I'm just gonna have to wing it. I hope that's in the middle there. So yeah, you can see the shine on it. It's already a bit smoother than it was. And then while it's still kind of warm, I just need a bit more heat. I've got a couple of these. There's a silver one kicking around somewhere that's actually better. Would have to disappear now, wouldn't it? I've got it. There we go. So yeah, this one's a bit stronger with a flame. And you can see as I go over it, it's actually almost melting to a liquid and pooling itself and leveling itself on the top of on the surface, which is exactly what we want. And there's still some ridges in it because we used a thick guitar string or a bass string before. Let me see if I can move the camera so you can get the glare from the light. I'm not sure. But I mean, already you can see it's a lot flatter. And then at this stage, you can then go with an even finer rake tool, like a guitar string instead of a bass string, which I do have somewhere. Here's a guitar string. There's one that I've made that's kind of square as well, which is really useful for hard surfaces. So then you could go over that again, or you could get some mineral spirits, like, I forget what it's called, terps or something like that. Not alcohol. I find alcohol doesn't really break down the surface. Swipe right. Let me see if that works. Awesome! Tara, you're a legend. Thank you. Amazing. Okay, now I can see what you can see, which is perfect. So yeah, I have a little bit of mineral spirits here. This is an odorless one that I picked up in a local hardware shop. It's called dissolvent, or anything, anything that's gonna break down an oily surface is what you can use. And then we just want to get a brush, get all the clay crap off the brush, because I obviously haven't cleaned my brush since the last time I used it. And then you literally just paint all over the surface, leave it for a few minutes, and it will start to break down the clay, the oil and the clay on the surface. And you can see where the light shines on there. It's already getting smoother. And as it starts to break down more, we can start to use the brush to really work the surface, and you'll see it starts to come off on your brush here. It's like a gloopy, really, it's like a slip, really. And it's super oily and gooey. But this is actually really good for when you're, if I was doing this guy over here, if there were any deep cracks that I wanted to fill, this stuff's perfect for that. You can just fill in deep cracks, and then once all the mineral spirits have evaporated, it just leaves the monster clay behind, which is exactly the same as when it comes out of the jar. So we just keep going over it, keep smoothing it out. At this stage, you can actually use your finger as well. If you're not working on a really small area, you can really get in there, and it's super, super slippery and nice. And it's a really good way of getting a nice smooth surface. Once you've used the mineral spirits, because they're flammable, now I will put a slight disclaimer here. If you've got a lot of liquid on the surface, obviously it's going to set on fire if you put a flame to it. But I've wiped a lot of it off now with the brush and my fingers, so if I go over this with a lighter now, it will really melt really quickly. And you don't need much heat at all at this point. All right, so look, you can see it's almost like a polished, smooth surface there now. So, in terms of armor, I'm going to take a tool like this, which takes a battering. This is one of my most used tools, as you can tell. And we're just going to trim it into a squarish kind of shape, or a rectangle even. Doesn't have to be super neat, it's just a demonstration. There we go. And already you can see, just trying to scrape all the crap off around the edges. And then if you want to tidy up those edges around, you can use any kind of metal or wire tools. I have a set of these dentist tools which are really good. I think they're dentist tools, or they might be wax tools, I'm not sure. I have so many of them now that I don't even know anymore. I'm just mixing up my monster clay a little bit because I just noticed all the wax and oil started to come to the top, which is never good. So what happens when it gets liquidy, you have to just, there we go. Let's just check the comments again. Yeah, Giovanni, yeah, they do. I mean, using a jet flame obviously helps it along much quicker. But if you leave it overnight, for example, or a couple of hours even, then the mineral spirits will evaporate. The difference being, I mean, I use alcohol right at the very end to kind of polish it, and I'll show you that in a minute. But alcohol works much better on Chavant, and it really breaks down the surface. But for monster clay, I find it doesn't really break down the surface that much. And you can be, scrubbing the surface with alcohol for ages, and it's not actually doing anything. I mean, it does a bit, but mineral spirits are much faster. So I'm just going to take this metal tool here and just slide the flat of the tool along the base, along the table, and then try and pick off all the little bits that it generates. Again, this is only if you want something really specific, if you're doing detailed armor work or something like that. I probably should try and get it more square, shouldn't I, really? Just being lazy. I don't know. It's okay for now. So then once you've got your first layer, and that's pretty smooth, like that, you can then start to build up or carve in the detail that you want. Now, I have no idea about a design. I didn't even plan ahead with this. I'm doing it a bit on the fly. But I'm going to take this little piece here and just cut this into another square or rectangle. Stop saying square, Tom. It's not a square. I hope everybody's doing okay, by the way. It's people have already said it today, but it's a rather strange time in human history. Definitely one that we'll be able to tell our grandkids about. Something that even my parents haven't lived through. Very unusual. I don't know what it's like where you are, but where I am, we're in full lockdown, and we have been for almost 2 weeks now, and we've just been given another 2 weeks. And I don't know if you're looking at the statistics on the news, but Spain is in a pretty bad way. And I've been living in Spain for about 8 years now. I love it. And I'm not worried about being here, because if where you are isn't like it is here, then unfortunately it's probably going to be in a while. And I don't want to bum anybody out. I'm just saying that for the people that might think this is some kind of hoax or some kind of unnecessary situation that the government are trying to control us or whatever. That's what everybody thought here until it got really bad, and now people are starting to respect it more. So please stay home. Stay away from the elderly and people with underlying health conditions. It's pretty easy. Just follow what guidelines you're given. And I hope everybody's safe and well. And I think the main thing that's going to come out of this is it's going to give everybody a new perspective on life. It's going to make us appreciate who we have and what we have a lot more than we did before. And yeah, just be positive, be kind to people, offer support to people that need it. If you're in a better situation than somebody else, offer some help. Maybe just, an ear to listen to them, whatever. There's rules for life, but in a time like this, it's even more important that we support each other and we band together. And that's why I have the utmost respect for the Shiflett Brothers for doing this, because like I said earlier, many people are bored at home, many people with mental health issues that are struggling, being isolated, and things like this I think can really boost someone's morale. If you're sitting at home alone and you've got 24 hours of live free artwork from passionate artists that can teach you something, it's an incredible thing. It makes me emotional talking about it, to be honest. Anyway, moving on. I'm going to need another sip of wine after that. Sorry, Jared. I don't know what bro means. I'll steer away from that subject. I didn't want to talk about it, but it's like the elephant in the room, isn't it? We're all going through the same thing, some more than others. So that being said, let's continue. So I've cut out another little rectangular piece here, and it's already pretty smooth because I've been working it against the surface of the board. And in terms of sticking it onto this piece, you don't really have to do much because Monster Clay sticks to itself really nicely. If you really wanted to make sure it's down, you could heat up both surfaces. Careful not to burn your fingers. And then when you lay it down, it will stick a little bit better. But generally speaking, we're gonna go over these edges anyway and make sure it's bonded properly. So I think instead of doing some kind of intricate design, I'm just gonna maybe layer up some different pieces, maybe carve in some details. I made this band earlier of Monster Clay. That's why I love this clay so much. You can do so much with it. I find that when I'm using Monster Clay, I don't really have to turn to any other kind of materials. Like if I was using Chevron, I might have to use fabrics or plastics to finish a piece with weapons or clothing or whatever, but I find Monster Clay can be so versatile. And on it, like things like this, you just get. Oh, I'll show you. You just get a sausage, or a snake, or a worm, however you want to call it. Make sure it's nice and soft, and you can roll it to make sure it's even. Okay, Jared, sorry. I wasn't sure. I have a tendency to waffle when I'm working. When I'm live, at least. I don't just sit and talk to myself normally. So yeah, if you wanted to make like a thin strip, you could start out with a nice even snake like that. And then you can literally just go along, flatten it down with your finger. And then run your finger along. Be careful here, because if you put too much pressure on it, it will separate, and you'll break it in the middle. And then you can just continue to rub your finger like this until it's smooth. If you want, you can add a little bit of mineral spirits on your finger. Probably should wear gloves, and that will really smooth it out. And then you're going to need some kind of knife like this, so you can get right underneath it. Scrape it up, and it might be a bit jagged on the edges, but we can tidy that up after. And then you just need to work on shaping it a little bit with your fingers or with a tool, whichever you like. It might be easier to make a larger sausage or a larger snake and flatten that, and then you can cut with a ruler, with a metal ruler. You can use an X-Acto knife to really cut some sharp. It's an X-Acto knife. One of the best things to have in any artistic studio or bedroom, as I'm in. Don't have a studio really. I guess it's a studio. Is it a studio? When does a room become a studio? Now there's a question. Answers on a postcard. When does a room become a studio? I guess when there's people working in it. So yeah, if you take a blade that's that sharp and you run with the blade facing the clay. I'm going to try and do it with my left hand, so I apologise if it goes completely wrong. And you are going to damage your table a little bit, but you can really start to smooth up the edges, or you could just slice it. It's not really working right now. Anyway, flip it over, do the same thing on the other side, and you will start to get a very flat band of clay. Strip's probably better. I'm not stripping. I just realised that because this was quite soft, it's probably going to be really stuck down. So I'm going to try and get my knife under it early, and it is going to jag it up, but we can always flatten it out after. And it is, I mean, hard surfacing, it's a difficult thing to do. It's a lot of push and pull. It's a lot of do this and then go back and correct. So let's use that band that I just made, and let's use it to make some kind of like an edging to go over the front or over the middle of this. So we'll just lay it down. Doesn't look great at the moment. Press it in where you need it, and then we'll just trim it. Oh, crap. It's alright, I'll fix that in a minute. Let's get a wire tool. These came from Monster Makers as part of the prize that I won last year, but I presume you can buy them. I've never actually seen them for sale, but I haven't actually looked. So yeah, like you can see there, it's not quite touching. It's not actually pressed into the edge like I want it to be. So we'll just get a metal tool like this, and we're just gonna carefully press it in, making a right mess here. Am I on camera? Just. All right. So yeah, I mean, it's still quite rounded. So then what we can do is we need a flatter wire tool like this with a square edge. And then we're literally just going to run over the surface very lightly. And just try and flatten it as much as possible. Wow, 35 minutes gone already. Can't believe it. Time goes so fast when you've got absolutely nothing to do. And yeah, same tool, great for sharpening the edges. Just run it down the sides. And there's one thing I think a lot of beginners are scared to do is hard edges. Even on organic forms. If you're looking at a face or a hand or a body or anything, even if it's flesh, there's always going to be hard edges. Not hard like metal or plastic, but as many of you know, sculpture is about shadow and light as much as it is about texture and detail and form. So don't be afraid to put some hard edges in. And these wire cutter tools are amazing for doing that. Same on the top, we're just going to run the tool over the surface. Try and flatten it out as much as possible. And I'm going to use this same technique on the bit underneath this that I didn't actually smooth out. So it's a case of just lightly dragging over the surface. And there you go. Starting to look a little bit more like something that was manufactured and not something that just fell on my table. You do the same thing with the edges. Obviously you can spend a lot more time on it than I am. I'm trying to rush through it to show you as much as I can. I don't know how Jared and Brandon feel about this, but I'd be up for doing an hour a day in this current situation. I don't know if they want to put it must be a lot of effort for them to organise all this, but if people are up for it, I'd be up for doing more. Maybe we could turn it into a week marathon instead of a 24-hour marathon. I don't know, just throwing that out there. People have got lives, people have got things to do, I understand. And I guess anybody can go live at any time they want anyway, so. Sorry if I'm neglecting the comments. I will get to those in a second. So, like I say, there's no right or wrong way of doing this. It's a case of using your eyes, using your best judgment. Every situation's different. Depending really on what you're doing. but this is how I usually do like armor plating, or I don't know if you guys ever saw the Sky Raider piece that I made. That was basically all armor plating, and that was done in the same way. Take a little piece of clay like that, shape it into I tell you what, I don't even know why I'm doing this. There was a guy watching earlier called Martin. See if I can find him in the comments. Where are you? I saw you. I know you're here somewhere. I can't even pronounce his surname. It's Martin Potjul. I think he's Dutch, but he has some of the best hard surface clay work I've ever seen. I will put his name in the comments. 1 second. He's also a lovely guy. Here we go. I'll put it in the comments now. That guy. No, sorry, Martin. I was thinking about another Martin. That guy makes some of the most incredible things I've seen using clay. And if you look at some of his work, he could probably teach you a lot more than I could in terms of hard surfaces. He makes these kind of, I don't know, they're like audio machines out of clay, but he gives them all like serial numbers, and they're just incredible. And he helped me a lot when I was starting out, just on technique. And so you can make pieces like that have rounded edges, lay them on top or lay them wherever you need to, and then you can just go in and detail them like I was doing a minute ago. So you start to square off the round edges. Flatten it off like we did before. Just drag the tools over the surface. You can also use the rakes, the guitar string rakes in this situation, but I find these wire tools are really good for this kind of thing. You can also, where's my X-Acto knife gone? I'm gonna have to get up close and personal with this. It's just shaving, really, shaving the very edges of the shapes that you put down. Sometimes a knife works better. There goes the knife. So you could use these techniques for leather, metal, any kind of surface that's not soft or organic. I guess leather is organic to some extent. And then you can add things like cables and wires and rivets. All can be done with monster clay. Let's put a little wire. Actually, let's just put a few rivets in first. Now rivets, again, make a little sausage or a snake like I did earlier. This is just the end of that piece that I had. And then we're just going to cut this into a square. This time it is a square. Like so. Hope that's focused. Might be a bit big. Just want to lay it down carefully. Try and even up the edges a little bit with the knife. Obviously, when you're doing it yourself, spend a lot more time really smoothing these surfaces out. The X-Acto knife's actually very good for dragging along the surface. Actually much better than the wire tool that I was using. If anything, it just highlights. You can see there where it highlights the bits that are higher than the others, so it gives you an idea of how flat it is. I've still got a bit of a rounded corner there. I'm going to try and just slice a little bit more off there. Might just leave that in as a detail. It's like a groove. I forget what the name of these parts are. I think the guys that did Star Wars invented the name. It's not gubbins. What is it? Can't remember the name. Like bits that you add when you're building like a spaceship or something like that. Just going to take a quick look at the comments, guys. Sorry, I'm neglecting it. I realise that. Yeah, Remy. I might just do an hour a day. Something to do. Breaks up the day, right? Frank, I'm in if you're in. Let's do it. Stefania, thanks for joining. Jared, yeah, I kind of do. I mean, I do, but it's kind of half painted and I have a real problem with it because basically I designed the sky, I'll just get it. I designed it to be molded so it breaks apart. But then I realized I couldn't afford to mold it and I wanted to put it back together to paint it. And when I put it back together, obviously it wasn't as sturdy as it once was. And I started painting it and it started to slowly fall off the base. But I do have him still. Here he is. The old Sky Raider, a bit dusty, kind of halfway through the painting process. But yeah, that is, if anybody's wondering, that is not plastic. That is more or less pure monster clay, including the base. The only things that are plastic are the sword gun type thing there. It's covered in dust and hair. This is plastic, this part. This is all monster clay though. So these techniques that I'm showing you now, that's exactly the kind of effect you can get. That little bit there is plastic, as is that bit. But like all the cables, these tubes, all the rivets and bolts, everything there, most of the things there are monster clay. And again, I got those techniques from Martin that I mentioned earlier. So yeah. I will get round to finishing that. It's just, the longer I leave it standing there, the warmer it gets and the more it starts to droop forward on the stand. And what I really need to do is drill up into his feet and put some really thick armature wire in, but there's already armature wire in there, and it's just a hassle of a job. And if I'm not gonna do anything with it after this, I just thought there's not much point. What I really wanted to do was release it as a model kit, and I did try crowdfunding it, but I think just because of the cost, it would cost me to mold it. You know, we're talking 600 euros just in silicone and a lot of time. So maybe one day we'll get back to that. So let's get back to this, which looks incredibly boring after showing that piece. But at least I want to show you how to get some rivets and cables and things like that. Yeah, clay cables. Claybles. Let's call them claybles, Jeremy. Yeah, thanks, Tina. Martin's last name. You really want me to try and pronounce it again? I think I did try and post in the comments. I'll try again. You got that now? I have no idea how to pronounce his surname, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Thank you, Stacy. Very kind. The comment above Stacy's, again, I have no idea how to pronounce your name, and I don't want to say it wrong and insult you. But yeah, a lot of it was done with brushes, regular paint brushes, but I did use an airbrush on certain parts of it. So let's try and get something done. I've only got 10 minutes left. Wow, it goes so quickly. So let's just emphasize that little groove a little bit more there. So I'm using the back of the blade. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to remove that bit. That was the original idea anyway. We'll just pick that out. And then just try and tidy it up a little bit, because it's not straight at all, which is because I'm not going to make any excuses. It's because I did it wrong. Could make a million excuses. It's because I'm filming. Can't work while I'm filming. Which is true, but I'm not going to make that excuse now. So let's put another little rivet, or not so much a rivet, but more like a, what would you call it? Like in, I don't know. Any ideas what you can call it? Let's do a nice twisty cable. Everybody likes a twisty cable. So I'm going to make a relatively thin worm. Just trying to get it in the center of the camera. There we go. Feels like you're back at school playing with plasticine, making little snakes. I'm going to show you 2 different types of cable techniques in the next 8 minutes. I'm going to need some wine. Sorry, not wine. Dutch courage. Cheap ass Spanish courage from the empty supermarket. So this first one, super easy. Just roll out a nice thin snake or worm. I've got to do this quick because I need to finish the surfaces with some more. In fact, before I do that, I'm just, so this can cool down, I'm just going to quickly run over the whole surface with the blowtorch. Now, being very careful not to heat it up too much, because it will just all mold together and melt. Not really what you want. you can hit all the cracks and the edges and it will bond really well together. So while that's cooling down, I'll continue with my cable here. This is more of like a thick electrical cable, I guess. Most of my stuff is in 6th scale, so if you imagine that guy, see these kind of cables here? I'm going to show you this twisty one and this more like I guess like an air tube more than a cable. So we're going to take this and we're going to fold it in half completely and then just twist. Being careful not to twist it too much. And guys, I'm not sponsored by Monster Clay, but I cannot say enough good things about this clay. It's so versatile, so easy to use. So this also works for like a rope. If you leave the ends on, it kind of looks like a rope. But I'm going to cut the ends off and use it more like a cable. There we go. And then you can just shape it however you like. And let's have it going from one of those little things that I don't know what to call to the other. There we go. Try and zoom in on it a little bit. And obviously, if you've got more time, you can really, it will need to be very carefully welded in with a tool. You just go around the edges and just make sure it's nice and stuck. But I'm not going to do that because it's going to take too much time. Let's do one of the fatter tubes. Slightly more complicated. I'm going to get a bigger, let me zoom out again, 1 second, there we go. Get a slightly bigger piece of clay. How long have I got? 4 minutes? Ah, oh, come on. I might have to scrap this cable and go on to the... No, I'm not going to have time to finish it. So I'm going to show you this cable and then we're going to have to be done, unfortunately. Maybe I spent too much time waffling. I think the actual sculpture aside, filming live or going live while you're working is an art in itself. Some people are amazing at it, and some people, like me, struggle a lot. But anyway, we get a nice flat-ended sausage like that, and then what we're going to do is use a tool like this and just roll the tool over the clay, giving it a little bit of pressure and trying to make the lines go all the way around and try and make them as even as possible. You can always tidy it up after. And obviously try not to go all the way through because it'll just fall apart. And we go work all the way down. And these techniques, I mean, I don't even know if they're techniques necessarily. They're just things I've picked up from looking at a problem. It's basically what art is, no? You look at a problem, you think, I need to make that. How am I going to make that? And then you try a million different ways and you eventually settle on your favorite way of doing it. So, like I always say, there's no right or wrong way of doing anything in the artistic world. You've just got to find the way that works best for you. And then once you have all your lines like that, you can start to shape it maybe into more of a tube shape like this. And then we can add it on. Where should we put it? Let's put it going this way instead. And then rivets, very quickly, 2 minutes left. See if we can get some rivets. Take a tiny, tiny, tiny sausage like this. Make sure it's round or square. I mean, if you can square out a piece like that, good luck. I don't have the patience to do that right now. And then we are literally going to slice off the end, and then one little piece at a time. Take a little slice, lay it down. Another little slice. Oh, crap. Lay that down there. Just give it a nice little press with your finger, not too hard. Yeah, this is why you need to stick these pieces on, you see. They will fall off. Like I said earlier, you can just heat both ends and it will stick together nicely. Another little rivet there. And that, I mean, that's the basics. That's the basics of hard surface modeling. It's a case of starting with the surface, which would be this part, and then slowly layering it up in the order of height is the best way to work. You don't want to start adding rivets and things until you've got all of your base structure up. And it's just about the story of the Space Marine in Games Workshop, or Warhammer 40K. For years they were designing Space Marines with without an armor plate to protect their face. And there was a constant joke that if any bullets hit the floor and bounced up, all the Space Marines would just be dead because they didn't have any kind of protection. And then Games Workshop eventually listened, and the new ones have like an armor ridge around the top of the neck plate. So, thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry it was so disjointed and rushed, but I hope you've learned something at least. I've learned a lot today just from watching other people. Please keep yourselves safe. Keep your hands clean. Be kind to the people around you. Help and support everybody that you can. And most of all, use this time that you have stuck at home to do things that you would normally complain that you don't have time to do. And I'll leave you with that. Thanks, guys. Now I need to work out how to stop the live stream. Oh, I might just stay here. I can't stop it. So, no, I found it. Ciao. Thanks for watching. I'm going to continue to watch until I fall asleep. Thanks, Jared and Brandon, for doing this. It's great. Bye-bye.